Hey Lions fans, I'm Vincent Menino. I'm going to host the Lion Digital Network Coaches Show this year. As school starts, we wanted to release a Coaches Show with all of our coaches here at Freed-Hardeman, recapping last year and looking ahead to this year. We hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Coaches Show. We're here today with Josh Epperson, head women's basketball coach here at Freed-Hardeman. And Coach, just wanted to give you a chance to reflect on last season. I know we had a sort of a tough stretch at the end of February, the beginning of February, lost 3 out of 4, and then finished really strong, winning 7 in a row, including conference tournament championship, a couple games in the national tournament before, obviously we didn't win the national tournament, so we didn't end on a win, but finished really strong. So was there a transformation or something that happened in the season? What do you think the biggest factor was that contributed to that strong finish?
Well, it comes down to, I always say the best teams are player-led, not just coach-led, and that really is what happened towards the end of the season too. The ladies had a player-only meeting right before the Thomas More game on the road, and although that was a loss, you could start seeing some things change, and that really is what happened towards the end of the year. The team just gelled, and you could see it in spurts during the year. We had some good wins, but we also had some losses that were close as well during the year, and so a belief really was there in themselves that they believed they could beat anyone. And really that went all the way to the end of the year. We lost our last game at the eventual national champions by 5 points at their place. So it's a possession or 2 game difference to us beating the team that wins it all. And having to do it at their place in the national tournament is tough too. But our girls really believed, even after the game, they still believed we should have beat this team. And that's saying a lot because that team went through and almost blew out everybody else in the rest of the national tournament. So on neutral floors. And so it says a lot about where our girls were. And a lot of it wasn't X and O's. It wasn't some change there. I wish I could say, man, I made some adjustment that was just great for us. It really was just about them gelling and them believing in themselves. And with female athletes, and this is probably true with all athletes, but especially with female athletes, confidence means so much. And we talked a lot about that, where confidence is a gift you give yourself. And so no one can really, literally can take it away, but also no one can give it to you. You have to have it in yourself too. So that self-confidence they had was big.
And some of those wins start snowballing your confidence too, right?
Yeah.
So, you said you lost, but you play really well at Thomas More, who was #1 in the country at the time.
Right.
And then you feel good about that, and then you came back home and started winning a couple of games. And then in the conference tournament, some of that confidence snowballs too with big wins.
You're exactly right. So we come back home, and I think we win by 60 the next game against UT Southern.
Yeah.
And so it was a really big win. And then we went on the road, and we had not, in the last couple of years, we had not beat Cumberland at Cumberland. It was their senior night game. They have a lot of seniors last year. And that was a big pivotal moment, too, to go in there and beat them at their place with everything against us. They had to win to make the national tournament. We were kind of going to make it, so it wasn't much pressure, but our girls went in there and beat them and kind of knocked them out of the national tournament picture because they got some other good wins, but it wasn't enough losing to us in that game. And then you go after that, you start into national tournament time or conference tournament. You beat Wilberforce soundly, and then we go beat Cumberland's, a top 25 team. And then you beat Campbellsville, a team that we had not beaten in 3 years in the tournament. And then that gets you to the conference tournament, beating a really good Shawnee State team, too. And then you get to national tournament where you beat a team that was a top 10 team in the country to preseason in Northwest and very senior-laden team, and getting to beat them to start the whole thing there. So
that's awesome. Talk a little bit about the national tournament, the rankings, and we play in a really challenging conference, right? We're, 3, 4, 5 top 25 teams most of the year in our conference. And so what kind of respect does our conference get nationally, and how does that benefit us?
Yeah, so typically we get the most amount of teams in the national tournament, which really speaks to people believing in our conference, and not just in our top teams, but in strength all the way through the conference. And so we typically, last year I think we got 6 in the tournament. The year before we got 8 of our 12 teams. So that's a huge amount considering some leagues are getting 1 or 2 teams in. So that speaks to that. And it goes to how the formula is done. This year the primary criteria is how you do against the top 50 RPI teams. Well, a lot of the teams in our conference are high in that RPI, and so that helps a lot. So even if you're losing or winning, you're playing against other top 50 teams. And so a lot of times in conferences you have 1 or 2 really strong teams that are high, but the rest are not, so that hurts you.
And that RPI is independent of the top 25.
Correct, yeah. So top 25 is nice. It's good as far as publicity. It's good for the PR aspect of things, but it really does not impact a lot this year, especially who makes a national tournament.
Now, if you're in the top 25, you're probably gonna make the national
You're going to
tournament.
make you got 60-some teams, 64 teams going, so you're in top 25. You got a really good chance you're going to make it. And it also goes to helps secure how strong your conference is. You know, Thomas More and Campbellsville were in the top 5 all year long last year. Cumberland's went up and down, but they were a top 15 type team. Georgetown was in there at some point. Pikeville was in there. So you had 5 teams. And Bethel receiving votes.
Yeah.
Obviously, we were right there too. So you had 7 teams that at some point or another were getting some recognition last year. So the year before, I think it was like 8 or 9 of us were getting recognition at one point or another. So it makes all year, like a 500 team in our conference is a really good team sometimes. And that's kind of what we are fighting during the year is, you know, we would win one, lose one, win one, lose one. And, but yeah, and there's a thing called the ARC too, which is different areas where they rank as well. And that's used to formulate that.
Explain the rankings for everybody just real quick if we could do that. So there's a conference ranking that goes out.
Right.
And there's a rater for each conference. Just you elaborate on that a little bit.
So each conference does have their rater, and so what their job is to give a listing of where they think everyone is in the conference, 1 through. They don't rate everyone. So if they don't think some teams should be considered for national tournament consideration, they don't even rate them.
Okay.
So they'll maybe go down through 7, 8, 9, however.
Yeah, the Mid-South ranks everybody. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we're getting pretty deep as far as that goes. And so what they do with that is once our rater, which is from Campbellsville, once she submits that, that is then used to make a top 25 ranking.
From all the raters around the country.
All the raters around the country. So they have to look and say, okay, this team, and it's supposed to be used if she rates us 3rd, then they hypothetically should never rank us higher than the 2 ahead of us when they do
in
the
their
top
25.
25.
So if you played Faulkner and Faulkner's like, man, Freed-Hardeman beat us very soundly, and there's no way that Campbellsville is better than them, whatever rater is still supposed to say, no, Freed-Hardeman has to be the 3rd Mid-South team in my top 25.
They're supposed to. Now, like you said, if they know from their personal experience that they think that's not accurate, they could change it in that way. Faulkner's a good example. We played them our first couple of years here, and that might be something because actually the coach Sutton, their coach is the rater for their conference, so actually that could happen. So that happens. And this year, kind of going to the schedule a little bit as far as that, we wanted to find teams that were at the top of other arcs and other areas. And so, like, we're playing what is projected to be the top team in the Southern States next year. So that should help us as we do that. Hopefully, we win
with your RPI and your top 25.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so elaborate on the arcs more. So we had conference raters, top 25 ratings, and then the ARC is a combination of conferences?
It's a combination. So usually you have around 3 conferences that are in each little region, basically, of the ARC. So ours, I forgot what ours is called, but you've got us. There's some that are up in Indiana, that conference up there, and then there's another conference. I think Bryan College's conference might be in ours too. So we've got those 3 combined. Now the good thing for us, going back to the strength, is we're going to have, sometimes we'll have like 6 of the top 9 teams are still from our conference. Even though we may be the 6th place team in our conference, we're still above somebody at 2nd place in one of those other conferences. And it's a really good gauge when you start looking at that. Like for our ARC, we usually get about 11 to make the national tournament out of it. So if you're 11 or higher, you know, okay, we got a pretty good chance of making it.
Okay. And so when we go to the national tournament selection, you're talking about, you mentioned RPI, which is kind of strength of schedule based. You mentioned the top 25 and the ARC ratings. All of those things factor into who gets into the national tournament.
Yeah, and then you got strength of schedule that's part of that too. And then the other part of that is how you've done in your last 10 games. So they want to look at, hey, are you 8-2? Are you 9-1? Or maybe you start out strong, but you're 9-1. You know, or you're 1-9 at the end. So it doesn't look like you're a team that's going to do
your best player got hurt, and now why your national tournament.
And that's one of the controversies of the thing is how much does it hurt? Let's say you lose a player at the very end of the year. How much should that be taken into account when they're making the rankings for the tournament? But they tried it. Those last 10 games is a pretty good metric. I felt like that, especially last year, because obviously we were doing well last year. So I think that's good. And it's a good way to look at how's your team trending. So.
Well, so talk about our roster coming up for this year. I know we have a lot of players back. What are our expectations, and give us just some insights into that.
I think the keys with that, we have really high expectations for our team. You know, our theme last year was together. This year we've basically said together we rise, talking about the fact that really done a lot as a group and that cohesiveness, but now we have to basically raise everything else up because our conference this year, even though we've lost some teams, we'll get better. The Georgetowns of the world that have brought in some transfers, the Campbellsvilles that have got all these people coming back. Like, we have to understand that even though we have a lot coming back, we all have to step it up a little bit too. But we do return a lot. We have four of our 5 returning starters are returning back. We lost one to graduation, and then we've got a lot of other good pieces coming in with the D1 transfer coming in that should make an impact on the roster. We have 1 freshman coming in that should impact us. What that looks like with freshmen, we just never know, of course.
Yeah.
And so, but a lot of returning pieces. Kaylee Odom, a piece that was a big factor her freshman year coming back off an injury.
Yeah.
So, so that's one of those things too. Like, for this team, we had 5 injured players last year. So some of it is not just transfers or recruits coming in. It's also like, hey, we got some players that are healthy, and that'll be fun to see what they do this year too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We've been playing a game with everybody,
Okay.
so we're going to end up here. I didn't prep anybody for this,
okay.
but you're going to have 1 minute on the clock.
Okay.
And you're going to have to name as many NAIA schools not in the Mid-South as you can.
Oh, man. Okay.
All right. So we'll get it. We'll get the clock ready here.
Okay.
And go.
All right. Bryan College, Reinhardt, University of Iowa, Kokomo. Let's see here.
I don't know if that counts.
You don't know that.
Okay.
All right. We've got Crowley's Ridge, Faulkner, UT Southern now. You've got Life. Oh, let's see some others. Okay, just gonna blank here. Bruton Parker, Welsh, Brussia. Let's see, Union in Kentucky. You've got Midway. You've got Milligan, Tennessee Wesleyan. You have, I get at least a couple more here. Williams Baptist. And, okay.
All right. I got unofficial 12.
12.
We'll see how that stacks up with everybody
Yeah.
else. I think it's Indiana University Kokomo, right?
Yes,
Not Iowa.
yes.
Okay, so that's why I said that one.
That's right. Yeah.
I think you said Milligan twice.
Oh, did I? Well,
we'll
good props
get
to
an
them, right?
official count
Yeah,
on the final
On the
product
replay,
here.
yeah.
And
So,
I really appreciate your time
Yeah,
today, Coach.
thank you.
And
Hey Lions fans, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, toggle that notifications bell to all so you don't miss any new videos. Remember, you can always see all of our updates and news at gofhulions.com. And also remember to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.